On February 19th, 1982, a partially skeletonized set of human remains were found on the riverside of the levee at the Bell River. On NamUs, it states that Jane Doe was estimated to have been 40 to 55 years old, white, 5'4", though her weight was unknown. At the time of discovery, she was estimated to have been deceased for 8 months, which puts her death date somewhere around late 1981. Her remains were found at 9 Mile Board on LA Highway 70, Louisiana, near Bell River with all parts recovered. She's stated to have been a complete or near-complete skeleton. Hair and eye color are unknown. Her remains were found wearing a Western-style green plaid shirt, size 12. There has been one exclusion to her case, Phyllis Brewer from Ohio. On the Doe Network, the picture used is noted as a reconstruction of the victim. Here it says that she was found in Stephenville, St. Martin Parish, Louisiana. Her cause of death is noted as blunt trauma to the head. Distinguishing marks include a previously injured nose, left rib, and 3 vertebrae, antemortem trauma to the nose with remodeling in surrounding areas, an antemortem fracture on the 7th left rib, and antemortem compression fractures on thoracic vertebrae 5 through 7. Antemortem trauma means that these injuries happened before death and has started to show signs of healing. As for her dentals, Jane Doe did not have teeth during life. The Doe Network states that upper and lower jaw had no teeth during life, and there was pronounced bone resorption, and remodeling suggests a long-term denture wearer, though no dentures were recovered at the scene. A complete DNA profile is available at the state lab, though. Along with the shirt she was found in, Jane Doe was found with 2 rings, a 3-stone engagement ring, and a gold ring with an emerald stone. She also had a pendant with a bull and a star. The Doe Network states that Jane Doe suffered a severe facial injury shortly before her death. I personally estimate that she must have been a Taurus or probably a girlfriend of someone that would be a Taurus zodiac sign. The bull is a Taurus's zodiac symbol, and the emerald is that sign's birthstone. Though listed on the LSU repository, which is how I actually found her, they don't have any new information to add. And here it spells the location Stevensville with a V. There actually is a thread for her, thankfully, on Web Sleuths started by the user, I believe it's pronounced Foliado, Nola. They stated that they're familiar with the area and that there are 2 bordering parishes where Jane Doe was actually found. During the time that Jane Doe was found, this was at the height of the oil and gas industry boom, where there were workers from all over the country. Anyone that's familiar with oilfield territory and oilfield life will know that. The area is fairly well traveled between Morgan City, Bell River, and Pierre Part, and there may have been locals in Jane Doe's area specifically. The area doesn't have lights, is a tad rural and off the beaten path, at least in 2016 when they made that post. They linked to an article from KATC, but when I initially researched this in actually January of 2025, when I initially wrote this, the link was defunct and redirected to a hentai website. Yes, I've never had that happen before. Quotes from that article include a tidbit saying that a medical ID necklace showed that Jane Doe was a diabetic. Supposedly, the department, I'm not sure if it meant the police or sheriff's department, never received a missing persons report, and it says that Jane Doe may have been visiting the area. I could not find the article on the KATC website either. Jane Doe's case was reopened in 2007 due to Robert Charles Brown confessing to the murders of a dozen women in Louisiana. A further post in the thread states that the antemortem injuries may have been caused by a car accident. To quote, it says, It is presumed the woman was strangled due to the absence of a bone in her neck, which I assume was the hyoid bone, and had been potentially raped due to the position of the body when she was found. Law enforcement had no missing persons reports fitting her description and presumed she was not from the area and that her body was brought to the discovery point and disposed of, or that she was traveling or hitchhiking through the area. In January 1985, St. Martin Parish officials potentially linked Henry Lee Lucas and Otis Toole to the case, or as suspects of having raping and murdering Jane Doe. Toole and Lucas were suspected by law enforcement to have picked up a hitchhiker along I-12 near Baton Rouge, driving her to Stevensville, killing her and then dumping the body. Lucas and Toole had traveled through Louisiana between 1975 and 1982. Lucas had confessed to 4 slayings in the New Orleans area. Although Lucas claimed to have beat an 81-year-old woman from Metairie with a crowbar in 1982, that was later proven false. The original poster suggested various serial killers that may have murdered Jane Doe. User Mad McGood made a good point, in my opinion, comparing Jane Doe as a match for Bettina Antone, a woman who went missing in 1980. Side by side with the reconstruction, I think it seems very possible. Bettina Minnie Antone went missing on March 29, 1980, from Redding, California. At the time, she was 44 years old, having been born on February 21, 1936. She was 5'3", 120 pounds, white with black hair, her left eye described as blue, and her right eye as white. Minnie had ear piercings, a mole on the left cheek, and a surgery scar on the lower back. She was also known to use the names Tina, Betty Antone, Bettina Minna Antone, and M. Tina Armstrong. On NamUs, it states that on April 1st, 1980, Tina had called a family member to say she was camping in the Clear Creek area of Redding, California, with 2 male friends. An entry in her calendar said she was going hiking in the Lassen Park area, and Tina left her personal belongings, her vehicle behind, and had not been seen or heard from since. Tina wore prescription glasses, and there have been 8 exclusions to her case on NamUs. On the Doe Network, it states that Bettina had a fractured arm and fractured leg. She also had dimples on both cheeks. At the time of her disappearance, she was suffering from alcoholism and depression, and she was schizophrenic. Dentals are not available, but it says that she wore upper and lower dentures. That is very compelling to me in regards to this Jane Doe. The Doe Network states that Tina had been in therapy for depression when she disappeared from her apartment at the California Motel in Redding in late March or early April 1980. Left behind were her toothbrush, makeup, clothes, car, and photographs of her 2 children and grandchildren. She may have been in a mental health facility. The Charlie Project states that Bettina's sister found some money and a note stuffed on or in one of Bettina's shoes at the motel after her disappearance. The note read, "Please save." Her sister believed that she was either killed or a patient in a mental health facility. It also states that Bettina was transient. Another person suggested is Doris Ann Tetrault, who went missing on June 1st, 1978, from Blackstone, Massachusetts. At the time of her disappearance, she was 34 years old and 95 pounds. Doris was white, with black hair and brown eyes. The only details on NamUs is that she wasn't living with her husband at the time, and her mother reported her missing. There have been 10 exclusions to her case, and based on one of the pictures alone, Doris looks eerily similar to the NamUs reconstruction, so I can see why she was at least mentioned as a possibility. Another potential match is that of Ina M. Arnall, who was also, of course, mentioned in the Web Sleuths thread. Ina went missing on May 28, 1981, from Poteau, Oklahoma. At the time of her disappearance, she was 46 years old, having been born on June 14th, 1934. It states that she was 4'11" to 5'2", white, 90 to 110 pounds, with brown-haired hazel eyes. She's noted to have had stretch marks on her abdomen and full upper dentures. She's listed as having a diamond wedding ring set, diamond dinner ring, a bracelet with diamonds, and a diamond watch. She was last known driving a 1980 Oldsmobile, a 4-car, that was diesel-powered. There have been 7 exclusions to her case on NamUs. The Charlie Project states that Ina also had on a purple shirt, pantyhose, a half-slip, a multicolored blouse, brown sandals, and possibly an off-white raincoat. I don't know if she had it on or if it was just like in her inventory, I guess you would say, like luggage. Ina may have used the last name Kreitlein, which I will spell on here, or put on the screen so you can see how it's spelled. It says that she left her home to go visit her daughter 100 miles away in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but she never arrived. She was never heard from again. The following day, Ina's daughter found her mother's abandoned car in a parking lot at the Tulsa airport. Authorities believe Ina left on her own accord. She may have traveled to Nevada or San Francisco, California. The Doe Network lists similar information. There seems to be few news articles about Jane Doe, at least what can be found through tools available to the public. Let us not forget that Louisiana has these state laws that prevent a lot of information being known to the public. That's the nice way to put it. One way or another, Louisiana's laws do not help, in my personal opinion, with missing persons cases, because a lot of these cases rely on public info or the public being able to access info in some way or another. So if this is all privated, nobody can help, is my personal opinion. Anyway, an article from Tech News dated May 26, 1982, was titled, "Skeletal Remains, Those of Woman." It stated that New Orleans anthropologists confirmed that a skeleton was found in Stevensville that prior February and was that of a woman, but the exact cause of death remained a mystery. In a report compiled for the Sheriff's Department, Dr. R. Christopher Goodwin of New Orleans reconstructed the physical features of the person whose skeleton was discovered on February 19th by 4 hunters along the levee some 5 miles north of Stevensville. Dr. Goodwin concluded that the bones were those of a woman in her 40s who stood 5'4" and weighed 120 pounds. The article states that she had medium brown hair, which was relatively short at the time of death. She had worn full dentures for a number of years, had type A blood, and may have been diabetic. The presence of a diamond engagement ring and a wedding ring, a gold-pierced type earring post, and a lady's Western-style shirt were found on the remains. The only sign of recent injury were fractures of the facial bone on the right side of the skull. Dr. Goodwin's report stated that such injuries were usually caused by a direct, blunt blow to the face. Although the injury appeared to have been inflicted shortly before death, it was not considered severe enough to have caused death. The report indicated that the body had lain in place for several months before discovery. I do want to point out, was it ever considered that maybe Jane Doe could have been more susceptible to being hurt, to being damaged by physical blows because of the fact that she's diabetic or was diabetic? Keep in mind, people that are diabetic are prone to certain things like diabetic neuropathy, this intense foot pain. Just an idea to throw out there. Anyway, in another article titled, "Sheriff Links Lucas and Toole to St. Martin Murder Cases," Henry Lee Lucas was questioned about the woman titled Jane Doe 2. The article stated that Lucas was very straightforward in the interview, but would not admit to anything. Personally, I do not believe that Jane Doe would have been murdered by Henry Lee Lucas. The information about her antemortem injuries tells me that she was a victim of chronic abuse, and what seems to have come from a loved one, as actually statistically that typically happens. The jewelry, mainly the rings, tells me that she was with somebody and that they or her may have been a Taurus, potentially pitting their birthdays between April and May. I'm unsure what else could be found about this case without any more DNA testing. And beyond that, there's little else known about this case.